Hi, this episode is part of the Web Application Security Testing series. I will be presenting many items because this particular recording is about the daily task organization around being a vulnerability assessor, a bug bounty hunter, a web application security tester on the offensive black box side. So let me just put on my mustache to start. This is to create the stealth sock puppet so nobody knows who actually disclosed this information for you, and so that I feel more secure. No AI algorithm might do that. Right, so here we go. The main part of this particular episode will be the article, this article here. It's called the Web Application Security Testing Junior Maverick Day Task Organization. It's something I published in Cyberpower Telenoia on Medium. I got one clap for it. So now let's show the map. Here's the map of the article. So, for those tuned in through audio, there's quite a bit of words. I will go and read rather fast, but it all has significance. These episodes all tie together. Eventually, I'll show the map of maps. So, in short here, we're just clarifying exactly what it is that web application security is in a day job setting. It's my specialization. So this whole thing is about how to organize myself in a day in which I specialize in what I do. So as you can see here, it's quite a bit of work to have all these cameras set up. So clarity, having information and text in the right notes and organized makes for attuned learning. In web application security, finding weaknesses through, what the most popular way that a weakness exists is through improper input validation. So this is all important to Bitcoin right away, immediately, because the ubiquity and the spreading of the news of Bitcoin existence and its use is very much involved in the fact that this is in everyone's pocket, can be, everywhere you go through a mobile device, on, your apps and on your desktop. So securing that and mapping it seems quite significant. We're playing with all these things here: character encoding, ciphers, encryption. So bug bounty hunter, this field, what is it in the Clearnet? What are we going to do there? On orange here, your personal life has to be balanced. The technological aspects have to be balanced. Your desktop, your actual work environment has to be balanced. You have to have a method to it, like a sequence to the method. The knowledge and the theory has to be organized. Your skills have to be also organized in their domains, and it has to be understood how they're related. How the web technology, how are you using the tools to enter into this field? And what exactly is it that you're doing? You're pressing enter. That's the end of the map. It says pressing enter. Pressing return or whatever, or acknowledge or run command or execute. That's what we're doing, really, at some point. Now, back to the article for a moment, but so all my articles there, a lot of them are made into NFTs and they're available on OpenSea there if you want to support the writing itself. But also in front of me I have quite a bit of items. Because in one of the previous episodes I forgot to show a few things, I'm just going to show them briefly at the start instead of beginning reading right away, but we'll get right into it all anyways. So I'm going to show how You have to have all sorts of things organized. If I go to the map here, so for example, even your certifications. Here's one of mine. Okay, CompTIA Security Plus. Here's another, offensive web application security testing in Polish, just to make it harder. I have a degree from university. I have other certificates, software testing, like QA kind of stuff. I have, Udemy hacker course completions. But perhaps most importantly, you need your final deliverables organized as well to show. Like here's one of mine. It's many pages. It's from a school, so in Polish. So I was hacking the OWASP juice shop and making a report about what I found. Right. So, and they're classified in the sense like organized material about what you do. This isn't just like sitting in a dark room doing things and like that nobody knows about. This is actual office work. Here's a web application vulnerability assessment submitted. That was quite serious. Actually, I'm not gonna show this one because that's quiet information. But also having books organized. Here's some books. How does cybersecurity really work? Having your textbooks from your actual coursework available to you. Having the very specific books that totally make sense to have, as in real world bug bounty hunting, real world examples there, and any other books that make sense, like Black Hat Python. That's that. But also, let's go to the second monitor here, where I'll show you. For example, you need to be organized in your bookmarks. Which bookmarks did I want to show? The AppSec tools. Check this out. You go in there. Now, I'm going to go into just Recon and then just Recon tools. So you see, this is just, I'm just going into 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of bookmarks, and I have, a few dozen, so maybe like 25 main sections of bookmarks. So those should be organized. Next, for example, I use applications like Trello to organize tasks. Right, that's a whole other thing. I use, I specifically kind of got these ready down here on this second monitor desktop. So I have PDFs of literature, humble bundles, So for example, in general cybersecurity, this is quite a big list. And then I select from those, those that will help me. And, in sections such as number 1, main to use, these are the main ones I would use. There's 5 of them out of hundreds of PDFs that I have. So that's a whole other thing, your PDF collection. You can have a live assistance on Discord. I have my own Discord server that you're welcome to, the ASPI Hackers group, which I'll talk about. But you see here that there's quite an abundance of sources that you can join at various levels. Another thing, what's another thing here? I have notes organized in Obsidian where I make all the notes. My own notes. This is where I take notes. So for example, I have 3 main sections: main, methods, and hacking itself. I'm not going to open the second 2, but the main one I can. And within these, like theory, so software development and all this, initialization, what I'm actually working on right now, the sources of information. But these are, vulnerability and weakness enumeration systems, and the scoring system, like Osawa, EC Council, Port Swigger, and various links. So these are my sources for information, for example, further in my own hacking docs. So I'm just going to close this off a little bit. So number 3, in the internet field. So information about the browsers and proxies and the server business side. The tooling. So all the tools, the main tools I use, secondary tools I use, and the types of skills that are needed for this, in case I want to note something about a particular skill set. So web application infrastructure here, for example, that opens up to a whole other amount of layers there. So this requires quite a bit of organization. Continuing there, so I have text documents that are the actual almost like playbooks, playbooks of how to do something. Just for a certain type of recon, I'm going through, what does it say here, 30 pages. So 30 pages of my notes from other notes, but they're, this gets better and better with every iteration. So you see, that's just a few organized notes. I'm just going to leave it at this window for a second to check my my other notes about, so I'll switch it to show you what I'm looking at here. So I'm actually looking at the notes of my notes, so I'm just checking if I'm showing you what I wanted to show you. So Minimap, my big recon. Oh yeah, so I forgot to show you that I have giant maps. So the giant maps are so giant that I can't even put them on the table. That this is a giant, I'm going to try. This is a giant map of things that are so complex and giant that they require giant maps. I'd rather do this on VR, which I will eventually. But it's my mapping of my whole Security Plus course. But those are note taking techniques of other people's information, whereas I also make my own notes. I create my own mappings and my own understanding of things. This is a map that I'll return to in Recon, which gives a whole process of going from zero to hero, even from almost transcendental metaphysical aspects, all the way to actual stealth penetration in packet trace routing, hopping, and going into a reverse proxy load balancer and a WAF, and so on, and into the architecture and infrastructure of a website. So without mapping this and having this in your mind, I mean, I don't think you can get as far as I have, which is pretty far. Right, so I'm checking here. Okay, so I've shown most things here, yeah. I haven't shown the actual, should I do that right now? No, I'm not going to do that right now. I think I'll actually show the tools. So well, I could try just in a moment. Give me a second here. So if I go back to the article, if I was to load the tools, so I'm talking about Firefox Developer Edition. Okay. Zap proxy and right, in Kali Linux. Well, I'll just name them this time, but basically there's a browser that you use, a proxy that you use, and that could be it, because in fact you can use the tools just built in the browser to do your work. And anyway, how about we go into the article, because the article describes this a little better, and sometimes I'll be referring to the map. So this is good, we're on a roll here. Okay, back to the particular article. So this is the map of it, but we're going to the article. I'm going to minimize Obsidian, minimize Libra, minimize the fact that there's folders and Trello. By the way, yeah, I would have all of these open on a given day. So here we go. So Web App Security Testing Junior Maverick Day Task Organization. This article is as convoluted as my thoughts. Aside from the introduction, the following text is meant to be skimmed in a way that allows for the neural connections to touch. That's all. And so while reading this, I'll also skim through certain parts because there might be too many and it's just meant to be in list form. My network of thought is essential to understanding the technological mesh I have to deal with when attempting to specialize in worldwide website security. Even with generative text AI, such as ChatGPT by my side, I must know how to relate, interact, and formulate precise language in order to manifest deliverables. Since the technology behind computing networks is of human mental origin for most part, if one wishes to solve problems in this industry, then according to Einstein, it would be best to approach the situation with a consciousness that differs from the one that created any of the problems. While consciousness itself is not merely intellect nor mental intelligence, it does include the availability of conscience in one's competence. My note creating process is mapped to my lifestyle. This means all my work relates to my life as a whole. I have taken many notes from the best sources, and I have created many notes in the ways that make sense to me. I have been using blank page mind mapping notebooks for 2 decades. My hands have set, then crumpled thousands of yellow stickies on blank A4 sheets, often resulting in large format concept maps. I used pens, pencils, and markers, converted to digital files using photography, scanning, and most recently 3D sketching in VR, in order to be able to work without time, without entropy, and without gravity at any location. Right, actually that's what I missed showing, that I have VR map versions of all this, which I had to draw in Gravity Sketch, then import into Blender to change into a format that can be accepted in spatial.io, which is a social gathering spot for VR spaces. The future is so amazing. I don't think they teach these things at university. Let's see. Right, where can I go? So if I go article, right, if I go to article here, unfortunately it's not loading the, let's see if I do the control F5 here. See, it's not, there's some issue with the cache or something, it's just not loading, but I have my maps here. If it were to load the core assets, as it says, I would show a space in 2D with mind maps that I've begun aligning in such a way in a space that I can take all sorts of maps with me to any other location, and they're in the space, like hovering, in such a way that makes it easy to go from one to another and to see the micro to macro, telescopation, and so on. So I'm going to go back now and continue reading the article. So these days, the desktop Obsidian program includes a good digital mapping tool. However, I've found that until my Meta Oculus Quest VR on goggles, digital mapping was never as good as my own custom physical mappings on paper. Probably because I mostly create for myself, not for sharing in a dysfunctional office environment. Right. I find that breakthroughs in clarity, solutions, and understanding come from a natural process of allowing the notes to interconnect on their own with minimal effort, merely by spending time close together. When I create notes, I allow for a vast empty space around them. This is precisely what gets filled in on its own. Often the results are my own personal new language and understanding, which may be difficult to comprehend for anyone else, because it is original and because I truly went through the connections to get there. In this article, I present a general hierarchy of notes outlining categories of knowledge, skills, methods, and tools relevant to ethical hacking of web applications. Organization and the reasons for organizing. Organizing from general to specific, I come to realize the significance of the obvious for focus. The most common web application security weakness is the failure to properly validate input. Right, and this is an important point because, so yeah, after I organized in all the different ways that are possible, I begin to see certain and receive certain insight that is quite helpful, that I haven't heard others talk about. So validation, sanitization, and encoding is crucial, but you come to see this only after going through the entire testing process. Then you see the significance of the most populated categories below, dealing with character sets, types of encoding, ciphers, encryption. All these have to do with the culture of letters and symbols used to transceive data. Most other categories seem to relate to this shaping of digital signals. Objects, time, and even business context at an abstract level. I think that if one understands how to shape characters so that they fit into other characters unnoticed, then one has the abstract potential to find vulnerabilities in business logic. It's just that you're dealing with people and human ideas at that point. Unless we have a decentralized autonomous organization of artificially intelligent entities, of course. As a bug bounty hunter, I need to identify the field I am hunting in. It is the character transception between client royalty technology and server business technology. By manipulating the energy of the characters, one can convert them to economic energy. I can only see this when I create a general map which does not have to be perfect, just the obvious approximation to be corrected for its edges over time. Unfortunately for Medium, it is not possible to indent here. But here we go anyways. So you see here, organization on a personal level. And show the map here for a moment. Yeah, we're just doing the personal aspect here I'm pointing at. So back to the article. Oh, the map here. So personal aspect, yeah. And the article. So life balance. Life should be generally in balance, as it is nearly impossible to work on complex challenges if one is imbalanced. Psychological, mind and body at peace. Physical, personal distribution, physical workspace. Global, electrical distribution through the system. This might seem cryptic, but when I go into the understanding that as a cyberpower wizard, my main actions involve manipulating characters of code, which are digital binary signals, which are electrical patterns, then this makes extra sense as a mesoteric observation. Technological, your computers should have a powerful custom setup, a desktop monitor on the right incline with the right illumination, personal home network, secured, or an office network, wherever your home base is in that sense. Task lists, your life list, Todoist perhaps, the hacking list on Trello, your work list on Obsidian with interrelated links. Your computer desktop, your mouse is your best friend, or the touchpad and finger swipe language, 1 for mouse, 4 for desktop windows, 3 for apps in the window, 2 to scroll in an app. VR, augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality, all these available, and I purchased mine for assistance. Generative text-to-text AI. So the daily setup, you load your programs that you're working with. Z-Attack Proxy, for example. Firefox Developer Edition, VirtualBox with Kali Linux, your own personal browser with your bookmarks, and in another window you might have your entertainment hacker music. This continues here to list the general categories of bookmarks from my ethical hacking tasks that you saw earlier. Practice, employment, guides, vulnerabilities, all the different entry points, NetSec tools, encrypted communications, all these categories there in the browser bookmarks. Continuing interconnections. Understand the interconnections of the open programs on the desktop, because I will be in the middle, conducting OSINT recon and various types of manual DAST and passive scans to start. it is important to make sense of VR or expanded states approaches as well. You should have a sequence, perhaps, unless you're doing intuitive testing or a very specific one with one aim and one goal in mind. For example, if you're already experienced enough and understand the type of web application just by seeing the context of its business. So you might start with recon and enumeration. In the context of web application security testing, this can be thought of as the process of identifying and mapping the attack surface of a web application. It involves gathering information, which we'll get into all that in its own series. In the testing phase, the general main points in the sequence can include reconnaissance, which is like mapping the attack surface, the vulnerability analysis, exploitation later on, privilege escalation, post-exploitation, and reporting. And this sequence may vary depending on specific approach or methodology. Vulnerability assessment and a penetration test are both important components of offensive black box web application security testing. Here's something that I would say is a depth of my own field. This is so sometimes you just start seeing things and start being able to map them on your own. Just get back to my little map here for a second. So the field is the Clearnet character transception, for example. So I believe that a new language is needed in order to play with the items in a new way, to solve problems from an inclusive level of consciousness. This is possibly the main point, the point of main focus I wrote there. Working with digital characters. Testing syncs where to input characters. The context is schema. Encoding schema parsers. Context and personality of business is significant. So these are notes to myself in my own language that I think anyone working with an attack surface begins to understand. Personal outline, the custom method, right, recon, then testing, right. So this is how I use some of the notes I have that I showed you in Libra, for example. I have notes on one page, or I have deeper notes on multiple pages. Or I can go to the source on the GitHub originals online. I have a methodology for testing focus. Right, and I have like a list of how I practice. Right, so the types of testing I can do could be practice, it could be a vulnerability disclosure, or it could be a bug bounty. They're a bit different each. How I have organized knowledge in the theory. I do have sections on InfoSec, CorpSec, NetSec, AppSec, DevSecOps, SSDLC. Guidelines and frameworks, I have all those organized in various ways, but the meter and the OWASP are the two most significant ones. I make sure I understand my community links and my reference items, which are my own maps, the literature I showed you, physical books or the PDFs. Diagrams on Pinterest are a good tool too. The bookmarks I showed you. Right, so work locations for freelancer, bug bounty hunter, the actual bug bounty platforms. The freelancer sites, private consulting and co-working places where you can share insight, and also the co-working could be virtual, such as in the virtual reality space on spatial.io where I have my mind maps. They can also be like through Discord servers, which I also have set up. And on that Discord server I have entire sections. I can return to that again for a moment. Here it is. I have I have a section, for example, and each section has its own document. So I have an introductory section where if you click on the document, I have the introduction to the Discord server and what we're doing there. and have all sorts of other documents as well. So that's organized for others to be able to join and tune in at their own pace. But the bug bounty field is the internet. This is the field in which I'm hunting. So I'm going back to the article there. Clearnet AppSec communication between client browser and web application server. So the organization of web technologies. I have a browser. I have a wizard in the middle, WITM proxy, and then there's a server somewhere out there. And we use TCP/IP and HTTPS. Those two protocols need to be understood. So also, since we're using browsers, whether it's a mobile application on the smartphone or a desktop version, we need to understand the mechanisms of these, the plugins, the rendering pipeline, security features, also the threat model of it, the market share. The dev tools on these help us quite a bit. We have to understand the proxies we use to capture web traffic. These can be, so we play a lot with these. The requests sent and responses received can be analyzed and manipulated. The web application server is the business personality. It appears to be at our unique service. So the tools we use, the examples. So, for example, the zap proxy, OWASP, Z-attack proxy. There's categories inside of this application itself. It's the main DAST MITM tool that we use, and you have to understand for example, even for a passive recon scan there, which is what you do, the information it accumulates as you simply browse the website in a normal way that a user would, you begin to actually acquire information about how it functions. And so you have to understand that there's an alerts section inside of this zap tool that can alert you if it finds something in a passive way. Secondary tools, right? Hundreds of tools on GitHub. Understanding how VirtualBox works as a hypervisor, understanding Docker, various add-ons and scripts and other downloaded apps that help you, and Postman to play with APIs, and so on. Skills is another big subcategory here. So, inside DevTools, OWASP, ZAP, and Kali Linux command lines is where the energetic manipulation of characters occurs by an ethical hacking wizard. And moreover, you need to know about IP suite layers. You need to know about web application server infrastructure, such as the content delivery network. Right, I have this on a map. Let me bring up this map for us here. It's on a little map. Here, I got it. This is what I was showing here, that you need to understand when you're entering a website from the point of view of recon or penetration test or just security vulnerability assessing. You need to understand like the containers of how a website is built. There's a whole application architecture and an infrastructure. There's a specialized computer on which there's an operating system, on which there's a web server. This is the application architecture, the logic and the data flow there. You see how the web application is a separate entity there. The web application framework is contained within the web application, perhaps. There's tools and libraries and security features within it. Right, and then so the web application also has directories, files, and extensions. And it is helpful to have a visualization of this because, well, for many reasons. I mean, the mind, when you look at this, it picks up so many more things than if you think that, it is just a logical, as I call it, train of words of thought that you're using instead of your abstract potential to see things spherically from all sides. So that then you begin to see that the databases and the resources and the dependencies are also separate. There's a caching system, and if you're stuck somewhere, for example, having a map like this and just like daydreaming off can actually help. I'll leave it at that for a second and get back to the article. So, internet control mechanisms, some notable programmatic workings of the devices within their boundaries. Right, so the deeper aspects of how a browser works, how a session works. When you're interacting with a website, you're in a session basically most of the time, and how tokens work within those, and different types of sessions, and the actual characters. It seems to me that mastery of this is 20% effort for 80% of the work. Various character sets, various ciphers, cryptography and encryption, using grep and regex, hashing and serialization, control characters, user input management, user access management, the languages in which one speaks with a server computer, the back end and the front end, the Kali Linux command line with the networking, and then obviously the payloads and the sources of payloads once you figure something out on the deeper end. And having methods, guides to use for original reconnaissance, for example. Sources for a manual, which is self-taught. There's schools, there's the WSTG process. Sources for automation, there's scripts, there's command line tools, GitHub payloads, GitHub programs. Testing. Guides to use for testing is for testing what is found during recon later on. So there's different approaches to that. On a brief note, ethical hacking, the action is pressing enter. Practice. Again, attack bad is cracking. System advantage is hacking. Secure the right is ethical hacking. Well, that does it for this episode. I hope I gave you some initial insight into how organized the organization needs to be. If you enjoy this podcast, you may offer support over NOSTR and Fountain, where you can stream sats. And the show notes and the descriptions may have links as well. And I will personally see you at the meetups as I take this stash off and enjoy a little bit of a break.